Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
What have we here? You a good cop? Hot shot? Sure you are. Why, you gotta be some kind of great cop. Come in here all by yourself.
Welcome back to another episode of Pint of Comics. My name is John.
And I am Lloyd.
And we are here to say happy 35th birthday to a very good friend of ours. He's Silver. He's got a gun in his leg. Irish American, I would assume. He's from Detroit. He's from Detroit. Mm-hmm. And his name's Robocop. 35th anniversary Pint of Comics special on Robocop. And we couldn't do this without a couple of our good friends. First of all, you know him. This is very fitting because he is the law of Pint of Comics. It's Sheriff Mike, Officer Mike Simonetta. He's here with us to discuss Robocop. Mike, how have you been?
Good. Happy to be here. Happy for 35 years. It makes me feel old, but it's still a great movie.
It makes me feel old, too. Now, the only person in the, not in the room, the internet room, our next guest, who we haven't done a show with in a while. It's great to have him back. Yet another Star Wars podcast and the Bohemian Geek Studies podcast. It's our friend Anders. Anders, what's going on, man?
Hey, how you guys doing? Really happy to be back. And this movie's 35 years old. As of tonight, I still got 1 week left to be in 33. So
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was the only guy in the room that most likely is younger than Alex J. Murphy, aka Robocop, is Anders. Anders, you guys have been doing a bunch of new shows over at YASW. What do you guys now? You guys covered all the movies, but now you've moved on to what, Visions and Boba Fett?
Yeah, so we did a run on the Visions anime shorts that came out last year, and Boba Fett, which just wrapped up. So we're getting ready to finish up our season finale episode on that in the next couple of days. And then, we have kind of a premiere date for Kenobi coming up in May, and hopefully we'll get some more news. I think there are plans for The Bad Batch to have a season 2 this year. Next season of Mandalorian's coming out at the end of the year, so... Plenty of Star Wars content. Always plenty of Star Wars content to cover.
Didn't the next season of Mandalorian happen like in the last 3 episodes of Boba Fett? Wasn't that?
You could say that. I have thoughts and opinions on that. I know you guys did your review on the first 4.
Yes.
So yeah. I'm interested to hear your takes on the last 3.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll do the last 3.
Maybe. I still have to watch the last one myself.
The last one, I think, is what we thought most of the series was going to be.
Yeah,
when they announced it,
they took all the action in 7 episodes and jammed it into a 20 minutes to a 20-minute period in the last episode. And it actually, I'll be honest, I'll say it got tiresome after a little while. But there was some cool stuff.
A little too much like, hey, wait here while I go get the next Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We're just going to do that again a couple times. But
absolutely. All right, let's move on from Rancors over to Robocop. Before we get too far into the whole thing of Robocop, I guess, Mike, I'm going to ask you first because you're a filmophile and this was probably on your radar even back in 1987. Do you remember? Because I remember. I think I was 11 years old, 12 years old, which makes Lloyd was about 46 at the time.
You love to do that to me.
but look at you, for Christ's sakes. You look wonderful.
I do not. I'm a piece of shit.
No, you're wonderful. Do you remember, Mike, like there was no internet buzz, but like the fervor over the fact that this movie was almost X-rated. Do you remember that?
I do a little bit. Now, I similar age to you, I wasn't old enough to actually go in the theater and watch it, but I had an uncle who was the one that turned me on to horror, sci-fi, everything under the sun. And he was hyped about it. And he was telling me all about it. He had gone to see it. As soon as the VHS came out, he bought it, back $80, $100, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
And invited me over. And then I watched it over and over and over, whenever that was. But I do remember it. It was shocking. When I did finally see it, and I've seen a million horror things, a million people get shot, whatever. That the first scene, and we'll get to it, but that first scene when he gets killed, that really got to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's rough, rough. Now that we've all, I'm sure, have seen the X-rated, it's even worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you guys, by any chance, I had bought the Arrow video a couple years ago, the Blu-ray, and I know Lloyd did. Did you guys watch the director's cut? Do you know, Anders? Do you know if you watched the director's cut?
No, I don't think. I think I watched the regular one.
Okay, the director's cut is literally like a minute longer, and it's all just gore stuff. So it's almost impossible to discern. I had to look it up to see. I kind of could tell.
It's when he got shot up, right?
There's a couple scenes, so let's go over real quick. It's when he gets shot. I think in the original version, his arm does not blow off. His arm blows off in the X-rated version. They blow his hand off, but then they blow his arm off. That does not happen, I believe. The headshot is gorier when they kill him. In the ED-209 scene, there's an extra 12 seconds of ED-209 blowing that guy away while he's on the table.
Yep.
And there's also a bit when Clarence throws his buddy out of the back of the van.
Can you fly, Bobby?
Yeah, I think they said there's something extra in there. I can't remember what it was. So it's literally like a minute. Oh, and I think when Robocop stabs Clarence, the blood is possibly even worse in the director's cut. Yeah, because it's pretty gross in the regular cut. So, Manster, is this something you saw in the theaters? Do you remember?
I don't think I saw this in the theaters. I was trying to go back because I knew you were going to ask that question, and I don't remember seeing it in the theater. So it must have been VHS, after it came out.
Okay. I remember trying to get in to see this in the theaters because reading like Starlog magazine and stuff as a kid, and this had that kind of pre-internet years buzz of almost got X-rated. It's supposed to be like this most hyper-violent movie of all time. And me and a buddy wanted to go see it. And my buddy came up with the idea. This is not a joke. He said, I'm going to write up a permission slip from our parents.
Great.
And this is absolutely true. And we're going to go to the movie theater, Middletown Movie House, which was right. It was a quick walk from the apartments I lived in. We used to go all the time. And we're going to ask for tickets to RoboCop. And when the ticket holder person says no, we're going to hand them these forged documents. And I told him, even at 12 years old, he was probably 15, a little older than me. I said, it ain't going to work, dude. And he talked me into it. And we went. And the lady, and I mean, it was a family-owned place, so she was probably the wife or the, whatever. She was like, no, sorry, this is an R-rated movie. You need a guardian or however R-rated movies work. So I did not see RoboCop either until video, which I probably, funnily enough, in all honesty, just rented myself from the video store, and nobody stopped me. But to get into a theater, no, fuck yourself. Get out of here, John.
Yeah.
All right, let's go over some of the details about RoboCop. Released on July 17th of 1987, so technically he's still 34, but he's getting there. Directed by the insane Dutchman Paul Verhoeven. If you don't know Paul Verhoeven's movies, here's a couple of his U.S. releases. Total Recall, a couple years later. This one blows my mind because I forgot he did this. Showgirls.
Yeah.
The insane Elizabeth Berkley film. And I also forgot that he did Basic Instinct. I mean, He also did Starship Troopers and a few other things, Hollow Man. But for some reason, Basic Instinct and Showgirls, I completely forgot he had done.
Verhoeven.
Do
you know he was a Jesus scholar?
A what?
A Jesus scholar.
I don't know what that is.
He's just a dude who knows a lot about Jesus and studied him and even wrote a book.
Oh, so he's like a theologist.
No, I wouldn't say that. He's just a scholar.
Really?
Yeah, he was part of a group. I forget the name of the group. The Jesus something group.
Here's
comes as a surprise to me when I was reading it.
Here's a funny story about Paul Verhoeven that I learned on the excellent Arrow Blu-ray DVD. He obviously spoke Dutch first. He did speak English when he directed this film. By the way, this film was originally offered to David Cronenberg. How fucking weird would this movie have been? This movie would have been probably just as violent and weird, but in a different way,
Body horror.
There would have been a lot more body horror.
Yeah,
So
and with the toxic waste would have been even worse.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Anders. The toxic waste scene is a little bit heavier in the director's cut, a little bit grosser in the director's cut than it is in the regular cut. So Paul Verhoeven, on the day they filmed the death scene for Bob Morton, Miguel Ferrer is talking about how he didn't really understand like American vernacular. What is one of the greatest lines in any movie of all time? Bitches leave. As he directed that scene, because he didn't, I guess, fully understand like the meaning of bitches. As he was directing everybody, he kept on saying, "Now, bitches, you move over here." And okay, now this bitch, I need you to stand over here, and this bitch, you go over here. And they said everybody on set was cool with it because they understood he wasn't like being a dickbag. He just thought that was what he thought that line.
He thought about ladies.
Yeah,
ladies
that's just like ladies. So he's like, bitch number one, put more cocaine on your boobs. And so I think that's fucking a good story. That's a good story.
That's good. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right, written by Edward Neumeier. This guy came up with the idea on the set of Blade Runner. He was apparently like a film executive, a producer. He didn't work on Blade Runner, but he spent time on Blade Runner, and he got the idea of this cop chasing robots. What if it was reversed? Robots chasing down.
Yeah, his office was right next to the Blade Runner set. And he said he would just go over there. He didn't even know that it was Blade Runner. He didn't know the story. And at one point, I guess he saw Sean Young in a tutu.
Oh, Daryl Hannah, maybe.
Daryl Hannah.
No, Sean. Oh, yeah. And anyway, he just got the idea of the, in reverse, only a cop who was coming to terms with being human.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
And he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't part of the production team. He just would go over there. He said he used to work on it. He used to like make garbage.
Yeah. The production team was so big that no one actually knew if you were working or not. You could just kind of wander in.
Exactly.
That's super badass. That's crazy. So he has written, co-written something very cool. He co-wrote Starship Troopers, a later Verhoeven movie. But then to I guess mellow all that out, he also wrote Anaconda's Hunt for the Blood Orchid. His co-writing partner was a guy named Michael Miner. Basically, Michael Miner was involved in some way, shape, or form with a lot of Robocop stuff to come. But his other big credit was, get ready for this one, Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, he's basically a Robocop career guy.
He pretty much helped write Robocop, and then, and there's nothing wrong with this because I would also do the same. He floated on it for quite a long time. This was filmed between August 6th and November 8th of 1986. Interesting guest factoid is obviously one of the biggest things about Robocop is the setting. It's Detroit. None of the three theatrically released Robocop movies were filmed in Detroit. This one was Dallas, Texas. Part 2 was Houston, Texas, and Part 3 was Atlanta, Georgia. So everyone had a stand-in for Detroit. There's one scene in Part 1. It's the opening scene where they show the skyline of Detroit, and it's stock footage. That's the only time you actually ever see Detroit. It's all filmed in Dallas, except for the scenes at the junkyard or the steel mill. Monessen, Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania and Michigan. I'm going to start with Mike. Mike, I just mentioned Detroit as being pretty much synonymous with RoboCop, but what is happening in this Detroit of what we, I guess, consider a very near future? What's going on in Detroit?
Well, crime is out of control, not unlike real Detroit, but and it's the society and everything's breaking down, and a corporation, OCP, has an idea that if they clear everybody out, they can rebuild a new city. I don't remember this in the original one, but from this background stuff, I guess their idea is to finally own a privately owned city itself, and a corporation can own the entire city.
I think that's introduced in 2 and discussed in 3, Delta City. Yeah, the main gist is OCP is this giant, multinational firm, corporation, and they are now going to privately fund and run the police in Detroit. So, Manster, that sets up the story, at least in terms of like what's going on here. Let's talk about the cast. Who is in this film?
Shabuya roll call.
Peter Weller as Alex Murphy / Robocop. Basically, a Detroit police officer murdered in the line of duty and revived as a cyborg. Now, I got a question.
Yes.
Why didn't Peter Weller become a movie star?
Anders, jump in if you agree with me on this one. I think Peter Weller is a character actor who had a couple lead roles.
Yeah, it was because it never really rested on his. These movies do not rest on Peter Weller's acting ability.
Yeah.
And I mean, you hear them talk about it in some of the some interviews and stuff later. Like they were really looking for someone that they could fit the suit on, who looked good in the suit and could just do the robotic movements. He doesn't necessarily have to capital A act.
You want to know a bunch of other actors up for that role? Or at least considered?
I think Schwarzenegger had it at one point, didn't
Schwarzenegger, yep. Michael Ironside, Rutger Hauer, Tom Berenger, Armand Asante, Keith Carradine, and James Remar.
I think the one that they initially wanted was you just said it
Remar?
No, Ironside. But Ironside was too short. So it's funny because Ironside ended up in Total Recall because Verhoeven liked him enough, he wanted him to do Robocop, and that's also why Schwarzenegger ended up in it. Schwarzenegger passed on it, saw Robocop, loved it, and wanted to work with Verhoeven after passing on it.
I should say that, Weller made a lot of decisions in interviews and stuff. He made specific decisions because he wanted to be an artist, and that's why, he went and did like Naked Lunch and things like that. And they're really weird movies, which most people don't like. So it didn't push him into being a star, but I think he probably made the wrong choices if he wanted to be a star, but he was very picky with what he did.
Yeah. And he also became later in life, like we were talking about the Jesus Scholar thing. Peter Weller became like a college professor of like, I'm not sure what, but like at one point he was teaching like in universities. So he's done a lot of things and he directs a lot too. And it seems like now, if you ever see Peter Weller in something, he's always a bad guy. He's a great bad guy.
Yeah. He's got a really good bad guy face.
Oh, totally. Totally. And he's gained it more as he's gotten older, but he's got kind of like this really cool, almost staccato way of talking, almost like a walk-in or someone, but much more subdued, like Peter Weller. The way he talks is very like kind of syllabalized, I guess. But cool. He's been cool. So who else we got?
I get a little Peter Weller vibe off of what's his name? Paul Bettany.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. All right. So next we have Nancy Allen as Ann Lewis, basically his tough, loyal partner. And she was from Carrie, if you remember. She was the bad girl in Carrie.
She didn't know how to give a blowjob. Remember that scene? The blowjob scene in Carrie it's like a mind explosion. It's like nobody on set knew how a blowjob worked, and they just went with it and filmed.
How does this work? I don't know. Just rub your cheek on it, maybe.
Yeah, and remember she's like talking the whole time she's supposedly sucking his dick. She's like, "Oh, I hate that Carrie White so much. I hate her so much." And he's just like, "Oh, baby, it feels so good." It's like, no, your dick is not in her mouth. It's just not happening.
She was also in Dress to Kill, Poltergeist 3, and also considered for that role. Actually, I believe had the role, but had other obligation. Was Stephanie Zimbalist? Is that how you say it? From Remington Steele.
Yeah, Remington Steele fucked over a lot of people.
Yeah,
because at the same time, Brosnan was supposed to be supposed to be Bond, and they decided to go one more season, and that brought him back. And the same thing happened to her. She had this role. Remington Steele said, "We're going to go one more season," and she had to quit.
Yeah. Then we have Daniel O'Herlihy as the old man. Now, John, can you tell me what else he did?
Boom, bum, boom, bum, boom, bum, boom, bum, boom, bum, yeah. Boom, bum. Yeah.
Nice. Yes, he was Conal Cochran in Halloween 3.
Yes, he was.
I was so pleased when I read that.
Dick, you're fired.
Then we have Ronnie Cox as Dick Jones, the senior president of OCP. He was in a lot of stuff. He was playing against type in this, because he was mostly a good guy. He had a lot of fun. He said a gazillion times more fun playing the villain.
Anders, you're young, but do you know what he's probably best known for? What scene in what movie he's probably best known for?
Trying to think, because I always confuse him with like two other people.
All right, I'll give it to you.
Is he? He's not. Is he Deliverance?
Yes,
He is Deliverance.
yes, he's the
Deliverance.
dueling banjos
He is
with
the
the kid.
Yep, that's it. That's him. Also in Beverly Hills Cop, The Car, Vision Quest, Total Recall. And then we have Kurtwood Smith. Love Kurtwood Smith as Clarence Boddicker, the crime lord in league with Dick Jones.
Every once in a while, I make an amendment to a prior episode of Pint Comics, and I want to make an amendment here.
Yeah.
So one time on the first ever Pint Movie Invitational, where Manster picked The Thing, I think I gave The Thing a 4, and it's haunted me for years. It's a 5. It's a 5-star movie. I don't know what I was thinking, so I want to put that out all the time. But now, last summer with Anders, we did our top 10 movie villains, and I've got to say, it's doing a podcast, list episodes, you forget stuff here and there. And boy, oh boy, Clarence Boddicker at the very least deserves an honorable mention that I don't think any of us gave him.
Nobody.
He's so fucking good in this movie.
He's great.
So good in this movie. He's so great in this movie. And he plays, he's unassuming, right? He's a bald guy with glasses, but that's what the writers went for. They wanted him to look like Himmler. They wanted him to look like this unassuming evil fuck. Lloyd, did you read his initial, who he thought he had gotten hired to play?
No, I didn't. Who did he think he was?
He went up for Dick Jones. And they called him and said, you got the part. And like a day later, when he called back, he said, okay, we'll have these ideas. They're like, no, you got the Clarence Boddicker part. And he was like, that wasn't my plan. And they're like, you're the bad guy.
That's our plan.
Yeah. It worked out. It worked out.
Let's see. I'll go with one more. There's a lot more, but then you got Miguel Ferrer Rocher, I like to call him.
Yeah.
He's the ambitious OCP junior exec, basically responsible for the whole Robocop project.
Some of the greatest bits in this movie are like not any of the action set pieces or the Robocop stuff. It's the little like war of like the corporate guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he's great. He's so, he's got so many, not a ton of lines, but everything's memorable. Everything's memorable.
Oh, just real quick. He was the kind of guy that would always show up to all these casting calls for this. So he would just go there all the time. They knew who he was. He said basically he would take anything, and that's what he got.
He initially thought he was going to be one of Clarence's goons.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said to the casting director, he said, if you have nobody in mind for like this corporate scumbag, he's like, I could play this. And the lady was like, well, I've never seen you play something like that before. And he's like, I can do it. And it turned out, it worked out. He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
And he was cousins with George Clooney.
George Clooney, yeah.
Yep.
He is the guy that George Clooney has multiple times said told Clooney to take Batman. Because he said when they were kids, they loved Batman, and Clooney felt a lot of weight, like he didn't know if he was a big enough star to be Batman. And he said Miguel Ferrer said, you're fucking nuts if you don't play Batman. So I guess
Clooney was a big enough star to play Batman. He's just wasn't a good Batman.
Yeah. Well, at the time, Clooney was still
a terrible movie.
It is a terrible movie. It is a terrible movie. He probably could have been a good Batman in a better movie, but we'll never know. And he's super embarrassed by it. He apparently still apparently apologizes to people for it when they bring it up. Like,
oh yeah,
it's
he
okay.
Talks about his bat nipples all the time.
It's okay, George. You've done enough good for this world. All right, so that's generally the cast there. I do want to point out, just because he's a favorite character actor of mine, Leon Nash is Ray Wise.
Oh yeah,
he's just so fucking good. The scene later in the movie, we'll get to it, but I want to bring it up while it's fresh in my head. When the toxic waste spill happens and Emil comes out from behind the corner and leans on Ray Wise. Ray Wise's response of "Don't touch me, man," is real because he had not seen him in that state yet, and it freaked him the fuck out. So that's just awesome.
Yeah, he was so gooey looking in that scene. Holy shit!
What did this cost, Master? Do you have the budget on this?
Yeah, I got all that stuff. Yeah, so $13.7 million budget. Made $2 million. $8 million its opening weekend, and $53.4 million total.
$1987. That's pretty damn good, especially for that budget.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for that budget. All right, so let's start off in this thing. We start off in Detroit, and we are at the precinct, and Alex J. Murphy has been transferred in to a new precinct. I think he's from West, and he's going to South, I think is how it works. He's given a partner, Ann Lewis, and basically it's his first day on the job on his new beat. It does not go well. They end up chasing a van down with Clarence Boddicker and his gang, and they had just robbed a bank. But poor Bobby, burned the money. So Clarence and his goons decide to I guess get into a on-road gunfight with the cops. They decide to throw Bobby out at the cops, and this all ends up at a steel mill. They get to the steel mill. Mike, what happens at the steel mill? Let's get right to RoboCop. Let's get right to because we're going to talk about this a little bit at length. This is the scene that is pretty much infamous. What happens at the steel mill?
So Murphy and Ann Lewis get there. They call for backup, but what is already set up is that there is no backup. And we find out later these are setups on purpose. They put people they wanted to use in places where they would get killed. So they go in alone. The Officer Lewis gets distracted by somebody's pee-pee. And she gets knocked out. Peter Weller, Alex Murphy, gets in there and he gets a bead on a guy, tells him famously, dead or alive, you're coming with me. But then the rest of the gang crowds in around him and they kill him slowly.
Anders, you've seen RoboCop before, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this scene, even upon multiple watchings, multiple viewings, is this scene still hard to watch for you?
I won't say it's hard to watch anywhere, but it is still surprising. It is, even outside the scene, like the squibs that they use in this movie, even for regular gunshots, are just above and beyond anything else.
Yeah.
And this particular scene is brutal every time. Why
don't you give us a couple of the things? What? Because it's not just the physicality, it's the verbal abuse. I mean, not that matters in the end, but everything that's happening in the scene is just sad and horrible.
It's sad. And like Mike said, like a little bit earlier, you got the hint that they've been placing people and transferring people around. So you've got the setup that this is actually on purpose. The hand gets blown off. He's kind of just moving. He's groaning, going down. And then that headshot is one of the more disturbing things I think I saw in a movie when I first saw this movie. It's probably like 17, 18 the first time I saw this. But oh my God, going through.
And the hyena laughing.
Yeah.
No, it's that guy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but I think here, this is again where you get Kurtwood Smith and Clarence Boddicker just great because, him stop. They were just going to shoot him, but he stops them, taking a bead on him and then blowing off his hand is both crazy, awesome, insane villain. And then that's where you get that close up of his hand coming off. And it's just like crazy. It's just so violent. It's so gory. And you rarely see, this by sure is not the masterpiece that Psycho is, but it's got that same idea where here's our star. If you walked in and Peter Weller's our star and he's literally getting slaughtered like right in front of you in 15 minutes in, maybe?
Because who knew in 1987 what the plot of this movie was? So you might see the previews and go, "Oh, well, Peter Weller's RoboCop," but maybe he's just a guy in a suit. No, he's a corpse that's been jammed into a toaster, with a computer brain essentially and a gun.
And Neumeier definitely he was influenced by Psycho, to get rid of the main protagonist. Kill him, not get rid of him, but just kill him early in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anders. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I just saw this on some of like the behind the scenes stuff I was looking at. You can see like the dummy, the robot that they were using for that scene. Kind of, it's just the torso from the torso up on the gurney, and they're moving it back and forth. The thing was gnarly. Yeah,
it actually looks really good. I mean, you could obviously tell when it shifts between Weller and the robot because it's got that that animatronic face, but it still looks fucking good. And let's not forget, I mean, I have it written down here, Rob Bottin, right? So this is Rob Bottin created the visual effects along with Phil Tippett, who created the ED-209 effects. Obviously, Anders, Phil Tippett from Star Wars, and Rob Bottin, maybe the greatest practical effects movie of all time, The Thing, not to mention, to me, the lesser of the two werewolf movies, The Howling. I'm an American Werewolf in London fan, But you can't deny that the howling has fucking incredible effects. He designed the suit. We'll talk about that in a minute, but obviously he designed all the animatronics, the fake Weller. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. That scene is crazy. And one of the things I like about that scene is it shows like Boddicker, even though he's like this fucking psychopath and he starts the whole thing, he gets to a point where he's even tired of it and he just blows his head off, right? Like the rest of them could have spent all day shooting him and ripping him apart, and he's basically like, all right, enough, and he pops him in the head. It's just, it kind of gives you the idea of why he's the boss. He knows when to cut things a little short. There's actually, in the director's cut also, I read the scene where Lewis is slumped over his body on the floor is either longer or not in the regular cut. I don't know if that's true or not. Do you remember that, Anders?
I think I remember that. I remember her finding him.
Okay, she finds him, and then like there's like maybe a 10-second scene of her like just hovered over him, and that's how it cuts out. And I think it said they kept the camera on a little bit longer. And the director's cut literally might be 2 minutes longer, so you're just picking seconds out of things. So now Murphy's dead. And Lloyd, do you want to kind of get into the Dick Jones, Ed 209, Bob Morton RoboCop thing? Like what's happening there?
Well, Dick Jones he's already got a deal going on with this Ed 209, and it totally fails. He doesn't give a shit that it fails. But this other guy, Bob Morton. Yeah, he comes in and he's got this other plan. So he's just kind of like the upstart guy. He's coming in, swooping in, and just taking the rug from underneath Dick Jones. And, he's pretty happy about that. He's joking around with some other executives and, I'd buy that for $1 kind of shit. But yeah, there's other stuff. Dick Jones, he's not going to be just put aside like that. He's got plans.
Dick Jones' whole plan is that no matter whether Ed 209 fails at this level, he's already got contracts with the military. He looks at this as something that's going to advance OCP. The old man is called the old man.
That's all.
He's not going to be there forever. Dick Jones is next in line. And Bob Morton is this young upstart who has the idea. So Ed 209 is a robot, right? It's just this like tank-like robot. That
head looks like a microphone.
It does. The head looks like a microphone. And for some reason, he makes baby and jaguar sounds.
He roars pretty well.
He roars.
Yeah.
Doesn't navigate stairs too well, but
no, he can't do stairs. But Bob Morton has the idea that like what it's missing is a human component, right? And that would be where we roll into RoboCop. Now, Anders, I have a logic question for you.
All right.
I don't know why I've never thought of this watching this movie, but I thought of it. Why was Ed 209 loaded with live ammunition during that whole thing?
Logically, I'm going to say that that's just the world these people live in, that this is a demo. And they, quite frankly, have one of the things about this movie is they have zero regard for human life. These people just don't give a shit.
Right.
You can't believe after that scene of total carnage that they're not taking this guy out of there. There's the cops, obviously, not
they're just like, cops. All right, moving on.
But there's no care. The only thing that you can hear anyone say is, it's too bad about Kenny, isn't it?
Yeah.
That guy probably had a family, he had kids at home.
Yeah. But that's where you get Miguel Ferrer being great again, though. Like, tough in the big city.
Yeah, tough in the big city.
Yeah. For anybody out there who I doubt has not seen RoboCop, Mike, real quick, do you want to describe what happens in this scene? Because it's one of the most memorable scenes of the whole movie.
Yeah. So Dick Jones brings in Ed 209. He said, let's do a live demo. And he gives this guy a gun and he says, threaten the robot. Makes a joke about it because, of course, he points the gun at Dick first. And the robot says, drop the weapon in 20 seconds or I will be forced to use, I forget the exact line, but
like lethal force.
Lethal force.
Yeah.
And there's a glitch. So the guy drops the gun, but Ed 209 says, just keeps counting down and then shoots like hundreds of rounds into this guy. And, theatrically, he lands on the model of Delta City, what will be the future, and his bloody body goes on that. That was one of the big, besides being very violent, that was one of the big scenes that got cut to take it down from an X, because they're just over and over and over again. Anders, you talked about the squibs. this guy just gets shot and shot and shot, and there's just blood spraying everywhere, and it's pretty crazy.
There is so much blood in the X-rated uncut version.
Yeah.
So much.
Anders, how many, just off the top of your head, if you don't know, how many submissions to the MPAA did this movie take before it achieved an R rating?
I'm going to say 15.
12. 12 times. 11 times it was given an X rating until lucky number 12. They took out like the 2 minutes we talked about, and it was able to get that. Yeah. That's
and to get back to your cutthroat idea, like I love also we just see this guy get slaughtered, blood, gore everywhere, and the old man is just like, I am so disappointed. So funny.
You know, every single bullet hit its mark too. Not one stray bullet in that whole scene.
Oh, all the people that were around him were safe. Ed 209
the glass,
him.
everything.
Yeah, no glass. It unloaded. I mean, this guy, he would have. I think what would have been maybe one step better, because you got to figure that thing's shooting out fucking probably 50 cal rounds. is he just like fucking burst into a bag of blood? Like you're just
a meatloaf.
Well, I was going to follow up your logic question. I mean, you know, why does he have live ammunition? Why does he not have like some kind of like handcuffs? Why does he not have like a net? Why does he have to go straight to blow this guy to hell?
Yeah, well, I think that's so. This movie, I mean, we haven't really touched on it yet, but this movie is like a I don't know what the word I want to use is, like a statement. You know, like
yeah,
on like where we were headed at the time, maybe, and this really shitty future, which we've seen a lot come to pass. Like, you know, corporations taking over everything, and you know, one of the things was Detroit is going bankrupt in it, and in real life in 2013, right? Detroit, like, you know, has seen this happen. So this shit has happened. So maybe they're just trying to say, like, we're at a point where we don't care about catching people anymore. We're just gonna fucking put you down. Because even Robocop is the better choice. He stops people, but he's not gentle. Like, you know, like there's always that joke in comic books and in some comic book movies where people are like, you know, well, Superman and Zod, like the collateral damage of their battle in Man of Steel. Everywhere Robocop goes, a building goes down.
Oh god,
like,
even in that little convenience store.
The convenience store, the gas station.
He ruins everything. Did more damage than he did good.
Right. The one guy that he probably could have just put out of his misery and shot in the head, he shoots him in the balls. I mean, so there's a little going on there. All right. So next we get the start of RoboCop, and we see him come online. Now, to the best of your ability, I'm going to go around to you guys, and I'm going to ask you if you remember, as best as you could put it, the 4 directives. All right. So I'm going to start with Manster. Manster, what was directive number 1?
Directive number 1, serve the public trust.
Anders, do you remember directive number 2?
Choose protect the innocent.
Okay. Mike, number 3?
Uphold the law.
Yeah.
And Manster, the secret number 4 that we don't see till the end of the movie.
The number 4 is you can't directly harm an executive of the OCP.
Or arrest either. So they've created this cyborg monstrosity that's RoboCop. They take essentially Murphy dies in that scene. By the way, I thought this was really interesting trivia. The scene where he's being worked on by that triage group, that was a real functioning medical triage group that they brought in, and all the dialogue was improvised by them as to what they would say in that real situation. So that was an actual real group of
if I remember, I didn't write any of it down, but I remember some of it sounding pretty goofy.
No, it was. They said it was all real, as if they had done this before, and that's what they were brought in to do. And they call the time of death and everything.
I wonder if that accounts for, because one thing I noticed this time I watched it is actually the doctor there. He sounds like he's bored out of his mind. He's like, all right, maybe we'll try and shock him before we call it, whatever.
Well, I almost wonder if that's almost like that gallows humor, like in horror movies when and I know Mike knows this, when the fucking guy that works in the morgue is always eating a sandwich. You know what I mean? Like, you're
Yeah.
just so used to this shit that it's like, well, another fucking, like, this is like the 9th guy tonight that's been shot 1,000 times in Detroit. Just earlier today, we had a guy that was murdered by a robot. Like, this is just the worst fucking town ever. So we get essentially what's left of Murphy, which is his left arm, I believe, his brain, his head, half of his head, are all still, I guess, good enough to be integrated into this. And Bob Morton decides, no, we want to go further, which this seems like heartbreaking. Cut the arm off. So they take one more last vestige of his humanity away. They essentially now have this complete robot.
It's kind of like Rocky Raccoon. I'm going to have that arm.
Yeah. Bob gets his arm. We get this complete robot now that's basically just got Murphy's face and lingering memories in there that are, the idea is they want his training, but not like any of his baggage. And as we learn, obviously, his baggage is still there. Let's talk about the suit real quick, because this is a whole bunch of shit with this one. So designed by Rob Bottin, it cost between $500,000 and $1 million to make. The first time they put the suit on Peter Weller, Mike, can you guess how many hours it took?
Ooh, I knew this at some point. Probably 6 hours.
11.
Jesus.
The first time?
Shit.
The first time was 11 hours, and by the time they got done, they couldn't shoot. Peter Weller was incredibly fucking pissed off. Peter Weller, if you guys don't know, he hired a guy named Moni Yakum to train him in mime movement because he had this whole idea of how Robocop was going to move. So he trained with this guy for like 3 months before shooting. He's going to have this fluid movement, right? He's going to be fluid. They get the suit. They get him in the suit after 11 hours, and there's no such thing as fluid movement. It's literally exactly what you see. And Peter Weller freaks out. So it got so bad to the point where Weller started losing 3 pounds a day in the suit until they took the suit apart and installed air conditioners. Peter Weller threatened to quit because he was so frustrated with everything. They got the suit time down to like 6 hours or something, but it never got better than that. Right? So 6 hours, you got to be there at 2 a.m. to shoot at 8, and then you're shooting all day long. So he threatened to quit. And Verhoeven, being very direct with his actors, threatened to fire him and told him to go. And the lineup he had, which Lloyd didn't mention earlier, who was interested but couldn't do it, was Lance Henriksen. They were going to hire Lance Henriksen.
Right, to replace him. That's right.
Replace him. Lance Henriksen couldn't do it because of shooting something, maybe near dark, I don't know. So they decided, let's talk to Weller. Let's get him, into this. Weller was also having a hard time because, as Mike had mentioned earlier, I think the artist of him, he demanded to stay in character between takes, and he wanted everybody to call him Murphy or Robocop. And they said, like, Kurtwood Smith just avoided him, even though they were friendly.
Yeah.
He avoided him on set. Miguel Ferrer purposely called him Peter Weller all the time to piss him off. And Paul Verhoeven was like, I'm not playing your fucking dumb games. So it doesn't sound like Peter Weller had the best time on Robocop, and part of it might have been his own fault. Anders, like, you're not an actor, but let's say you're an actor and you're going to make a good sum of money, but you could also go do another movie. Would you ever at any point stick around if it took 6 to 11 hours to put you in this fucking thing?
If I didn't have anything lined up right away, I could say I'd probably do it. I'd probably stick it out. I would like to think I wouldn't be as insistent on things. I would not want people to call me Robo.
No.
Walking around the set. But this probably wasn't as standard for the time, but I've almost all, I think a lot of my favorite movies that come out now, you hear it takes forever to get people into makeup. Like the Hobbits for Lord of the Rings, it would take, an hour and a half to put each of their feet on. So they had to stand in the makeup trailer, and then they had to sit for another 2 hours to get everything else. That's the job.
All right. Manster, do you think there's something a little bit different than, like, let's say you had to sit in makeup for 3 hours as opposed to being put into something? Like, I'm claustrophobic. I don't think I could do that. Like, I think that would just be a nightmare. Would you be cool with that?
I guess shit. I'm a pretty patient person, but I don't want to be stuffed into some freaking contraption that I can't move in. What if you gotta go take a dump 3 hours in? Yeah, that would be kind of rough. I don't know if I can make it. Maybe it depends how much. I don't know what his salary was for this, but
Yeah,
it would have to be a lot, and I'd have to be pretty desperate.
yeah. I'm sure Peter Weller at the time was not like demanding, millions of dollars. It was probably a good pickup on their part. That's probably
Right.
part of the reason why. All right. So that's all the outside stuff. RoboCop shows up. He is now back to we get like this montage kind of RoboCop out in the street. He goes to a liquor store robbery and he foils that, and he foils a rape again by shooting the guy through the it's a great scene. The guy's got a young lady, knife to her throat. He's telling RoboCop basically, go fuck yourself. He lifts the girl up. RoboCop uses his targeting system to shoot him in the dick through her dress. Very cool.
Hey, do you know how that scene was written?
No.
It was written that he was supposed to shoot him in the head, graze her cheek. But when Verhoeven shot the scene, he just changed it without telling anybody. And there are, what's his name, the writer there? Newmeyer. Because he was there on most of the set. I mean, he was there for like the entire shoot, the writer, which is not typical. But so he saw that he was doing something different, and they just went along with it, and he felt that was obviously the better choice, more cinematic, and obviously being shot in the dick and balls.
Of course.
Kind of makes good cinema.
Brutal. Mike,
Yeah.
Officer Mike, I got a question for you. 35 years later, do you think the RoboCop suit holds up watching it today?
I do. I mean, the only special effects wise, the only thing you can really talk about is Ed 209 is stop motion.
Yep.
And it's kind of obvious that it's stop motion. It's not terrible, but
yeah.
it's kind of obvious. But it also kind of goes with the movie because
it's
he's
charming,
supposed to be robotic, and he's would be stiff. But I think it holds up. I don't see any glaring items. I'll tell you the only thing. It was lousy, but I saw the remake, and the only thing I thought that I liked is with the advent of digital, they were actually able to show Murphy like what was left of him. Like they had a thing where in one scene they take his suit off, and it's just they're just hanging a pair of shoulders and a head, and
like a lung. Yeah, there's a lung there. Yeah,
and that I thought that was a neat thing that new special effects allowed. The rest of the movie was garbage, but honestly, no, I'm fine with the suit. I think it looks great. Some of the movie, even though it's supposed to be in the near future, there's a lot of 80s screaming through, but still, it's got a great feel throughout. I thought a lot about the video, because now we no longer have actual TVs, and every time you saw commercials or that joke news set, or even when we look from RoboCop view, it's like an old TV view,
right?
But I still think it's fun, it's charming, and I think it holds up. I think it holds up entirely.
Manster, one of the biggest things in this movie, and Mike just kind of mentioned it, is the presentation. And Verhoeven would go on to kind of do it again in Starship Troopers, where we jump to newscasts and commercials,
right,
and stuff like that. Do you like that aspect, or do you feel like it's like a forced over the narrative?
It does feel gimmicky to me. It felt very Frank Miller-ish to me, which we'll get to in another episode maybe. But yeah, it takes you out a little, but I think it helps. It helps drive the plot. It shows you some background, and it gives you it's part of world building, I think. Like when the two executives are joking and the one guy says, "I'll buy that for $1," it harkens back to the things that you're seeing in those commercials and news shows.
Right. By the way, people probably know this, but like it's not well known. S.D. Nemeth played the character of Bixby Samper.
Yeah.
Who is the star of the sitcom that we keep on seeing over and over again, called It's Not My Problem. So if you're ever wondering what that it's based on Benny Hill, obviously, like this older, like kind of this cad with like all these hot chicks around him. And of course it gets one of the greatest lines of all time is, I'd buy that for $1. that's just completely like connected to RoboCop forever, and people
So-
still say it. And I think people probably say it and don't know what it's from.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So I have one thing to mention. You can cut this out completely if you want. But did you watch the deleted scenes in the Arrow video?
I did not watch all of them, but are you talking about the end where you find out that he was he was a pervert or something? Like,
Well, there is one deleted scene called Topless Pizza.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's basically two girls doing pizza with their breasts exposed in their uniform, covered with like flour and pizza dough. And it's that dude there, and he goes up there and he goes up to each one of them and sort of handles them a little bit, and then comes back to the screen and says, "I'll buy that for $1."
It was,
Lloyd,
It was really something. It was unbelievable that they even filmed it.
Lloyd, I know sometimes on the Pint, I try to err on the side of caution with what we say, but when it comes to tits, I'm not taking any of that out. Because that tits are not on my list of no-fly zone.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
no.
I thought it was funny, but at the same time, kind of disturbing.
Yeah.
I did think, though, that was great future commentary by the writers in Verhoeven. Having people just sit around watching moronic items and just laughing their heads off. That's where we ended up.
What is TikTok?
Yeah, and reality TV and all that stuff is just moronic, and we all sit around and watch it. And
There's that whole scene where Emil is like they're like blowing the cars up with those giant guns, and he's literally just trying to watch It's Not My Problem through the TV window.
Yeah.
To the point where he breaks the window so he could hear it over their noise. Like,
He throws a whiskey bottle through it.
Yeah.
And he's just laughing the whole time because he's loving it.
Anders, do you ever watch these movies and wish that you can get a game like what was it called, Nukem or?
God, Nukem.
Oh, that game was awesome.
Oh, that was awesome. Nukem was awesome. I loved all those intercut scenes, all the commercials, everything. They remind me of what was it? What was the movie? Stay Tuned. Was the movie?
Oh, John Ritter. Yeah.
With John Ritter, and some of the commercials from that. Actually, I mean, even now, a lot of people will do stuff like this. It's not like in the shows, in the movies, but you guys watch The Boys on Amazon?
I saw the first season. Yeah.
The first season, yeah. Well, they've had these Vought News Network. They'll come out with like 7 or 8 minutes of like a news blurb once a month, and it's up on YouTube to kind of keep you in with what's going on in that world.
Right.
And it's that whole corporate thing that's been fun. I really like the news segments actually in this one. They do a lot of good world building, right from the jump. I think in that first opening news montage, they're talking about the president doing his press conference from the space station.
Oh, and and
they lose the gravity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they everybody keeps mentioning that all around the world things are just falling apart. Which
this war over here, this war over here.
Yeah.
By the way, here's some baked goods.
Yeah,
and I did like it was great at the time, but they had just done the Jarvik heart. And then in this movie, very recently, and they were like, what was it, model like 9 or something? They're selling as a commercial in the future. So that was a really good gag then. Now probably people are like,
what?
It's still kind of funny that you have a private place like come get a new heart, but the fact that it was a Jarvik heart was a really good gag back in the day.
Now, Lloyd, did this movie make you want to buy a Ford Taurus at all?
No, I don't want a Ford Taurus thing.
Or
an SUX.
A 6,000 SUX.
6,000 sucks.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back a little bit into the movie here. So RoboCop starts to go out. As he's going out, he starts to have a little bit of flashbacks here and there. Dick Jones we find out through plot machinations that Dick Jones has hired Clarence Boddicker essentially to take care of his light work, aka Bob Morton. He kills Bob in a great scene where Bob is partying with a couple of bitches, doing coke off of their titties, just gets shot to shit and grenaded out. And we pretty much get the idea that Dick is like the main bad guy. His whole idea is he wants RoboCop to fail because he still wants the Ed 209 sale to go through. So you get like that whole end there. And Murphy starts to come through into RoboCop, and he starts to remember his murder. He remembers his wife and kid, but they're long gone. And he suddenly has like kind of a mental break and decides to go find Clarence and all of his guys. And we get a montage where he does that. He goes into a nightclub and finds Leon Nash, and in one of my favorite scenes, drags him out by his fucking hair, which is just awesome. He ends up running into Emil at a gas station. Emil's robbing a very scholarly guy behind the counter.
And that's a good scene. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
That's a great scene. Just the fact that guy's in there, he's got a protractor and he's doing geometry. Yeah. That guy could have just been sitting there. He could have been doing nothing, but He gave him something. He gave that character a history and a background that you get just by seeing him doing that. I think that's brilliant.
What are you, a college boy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question, poking a fiction movie, but how long do you think it was between when he gets killed and then he's out on the streets? Because when he goes back to his house, it's deserted. Yeah. It's very strange that there's like half burnt remnants of his stuff, like sitting on the counter. I mean, I don't think you'd do that if you're trying to sell a house, but
that seemed weird, that part.
How long do you think that was? Because, I get it that the wife is going to pack up and leave, her heart's broken, her life's over there. And why the fuck does she want to stay in Detroit? But, how long do you think that was?
I'm thinking anywhere from like a year to 18 months, I think it took. Because during that montage where they're like bringing him online bit by bit, like we go through a couple of holidays. I think they have a Christmas party at some point.
Definitely a New Year's party.
Definitely a New Year's party, yeah. So I think it was quite a while.
Yeah. Master, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking between like 6 months and a year, about a year's time. Somewhere in there.
I would go 6 months to a year, because I think at one point too, like because there's a scene, like a little bit of a scene where he keeps on turning on and off again, take the arm off. And it seems like they're running into some problems. So it seems like maybe, it's taken them longer than they thought. But yeah, so they're out there. He comes back and it all hits him. He goes and gets Clarence, and at this point basically overrides any of his commands to just arrest somebody and almost kills him. It's a great scene. Throws him through like 5 fucking windows.
That's great.
And another great moment. Decides he's not going to kill Clarence. He brings Clarence to the police station and basically tells him, book him. He's a cop killer. He killed a cop. It was Kurtwood Smith's first day of filming.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
He says to Verhoeven, I want to spit blood on the fucking notepad. And Verhoeven's like, that's a great idea, do it. But didn't tell anybody that he was going to do it while they film. So he basically, drops him off at the desk. You got the desk sergeant that's in all the movies, by the way. This guy is just like, he's like a solid character actor. And Kurtwood Smith turns to the desk sergeant and says, give me my fucking phone call, and then spits a blood loogie on the fucking whitest of white paper. And it's just so gross. But again, this movie is so filled with so many memorable little bits and pieces. I do want to ask a question. I'm going to ask the Manster. So like, I find this funny every time I see this movie. R2-D2, right? R2-D2.
Funny little robot dude.
Has a little data port that he uses. He uses it famously. He uses it famously in Empire Strikes Back to start the hyperdrive again. He uses it to shut off the trash compactor. And essentially, for lack of a better word, it looks like a dick. It's like, it's got like kind of a dick shape.
It's a needle dick.
Right. It's like a bar. It's like a tube, and then it's got kind of a dicky shaped head. Okay, that it kind of makes sense, Why is RoboCop's info spike a goddamned like 10th level weapon?
Well, it's clearly so you can interface with any sort of computer system and kill bitches.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder, do you think, Anders, that it was designed with like having the idea of do you think there's supposed to be a weapon capability, or it's just the most dangerous piece of computer tooling ever?
I think it's a little of both. I think it's definitely meant to be able to force his way into just about any computer system that it needs to. He's not like Venom in the Tom Hardy movies that he can just organically attach to the computers. But nothing about RoboCop should be friendly. RoboCop is meant to be a weapon.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I think that's just great filmmaking, because it's when we first see it, he's near a Cecil, a little squeaky guy. So when
Yeah.
he flips that out, Cecil like craps himself when he sees that whatever you would call it, dagger coming out of his hand. But that's also just great filmmaking, to flash forward to later that it's a weapon that he has. So later when he uses it, it's not something they made up out of nowhere. You were like, oh yeah, that's right. He uses that for the to access data.
Boy, I can't remember who sent this to me on Twitter. Jim Hurst. He's a comic book writer that me and Sir John had met, I think, online a couple years ago. Very cool guy. Follows us on Twitter. He sent me an article, and he said, "Did you know that RoboCop is considered almost a perfectly asymmetrical movie?" Have you guys ever have looked into this or heard of this?
Asymmetrical movie.
So from front to back, things happen in a certain order in the beginning that also happen backwards from the middle to the end. So here's what I'll give you a couple examples.
That seems symmetrical.
Early in the movie, or symmetrical. I'm
okay.
sorry, I might be saying it incorrectly. It might be symmetrical. Beginning of the movie, he meets Aunt Lewis. What's your name? Murphy. End of the movie, what's your name? Murphy.
Right.
Beginning of the movie, he gets shot by a firing squad. Towards the end of the movie, the cops shoot him again like a firing squad. And those are just two examples. I read the article. There's a couple more in there. But,
I'd like to read that because I'm so interested in stuff like that.
I'll find it again and I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more examples. And it's, again, they said that nobody has ever said it was done on purpose, but it just, if you look at it from a certain way, it goes, a lot of things line up back from front to back in a certain manner. I thought it was interesting. So symmetrical, I guess. I'm sorry, not asymmetrical. I'm terrible with shit like that. Don't throw an in or an a in front of a word. I'm gonna
inflammable. Wait a minute.
Inflammable.
Is that flammable or not flammable?
So Dick Jones has now gotten rid of Bob. The cop, he's in charge of the cops. RoboCop goes to take him down, and he finds out at that moment that there is the Directive 4 we talked about before, that you cannot arrest a senior member of OCP. So he starts to shut down. Ed 209 comes back into the picture and beats the fuck out of RoboCop, starts shooting missiles at him inside of a building. That can't be good.
Ed 209 just never had any chill,
No, there's no chill, zero chill. As we discussed earlier, what does RoboCop find out? What defeats Ed 209 in terms of how do you get away from Ed 209?
Well, Ed 209 is only created, so it's a gag in one of the comics later, but he's only created to walk on flat surfaces. So RoboCop goes down the stairs. Ed 209 doesn't know how to navigate stairs. I mean, his feet are too big for him anyways, and he tumbles down the stairs.
I love how he gingerly tests the stair over and over again,
Yeah.
And then when he falls, his legs are akimbo.
Yep.
And Murphy
he looks like
away.
that chicken walker, the ATST in Star Wars.
Yeah. But you talked about his voices, and that was, they make him very animalistic in that way. Kind of like testing it out, and then he's screaming, yelling as he's falling down the stairs. It was great. It was a great gag. Like I said, later in the comics, they have a joke about it, that it's kind of a similar scene where Ed 209 is on a floor, and then he forces everybody to get out of an elevator because he's got to chase RoboCop down because he has to go in the elevator, because by then he knows he can't do the stairs anymore.
That's a good gag.
Well, hey, at least OCP learns from their mistakes. Murphy gets away, but now the cops are all against him because Dick Jones is in charge of the cops. They fucking decimate him. But Lewis, his partner, rescues him, and they go back to the old steel mill. Is it the same steel mill he got killed at? Is that? I know that's maybe a dumb question. Is that the same place he got killed at?
I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Okay, I thought so too. I know it was never really said, but I kind of assumed it was. So they go back. We get a little bit of time where him and her have a little bit of, they talk. He makes it clear that, he's remembering stuff. And she's obviously got his back. She helps him learn how to target, because his systems were all knocked to fuck because he really got fucked up by those cops. At one point, he rolls down 3 separate sections.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
That parking garage to get away from them. He just keeps landing harder and harder. And they end up there while Clarence and his guys show up to kill him. I'm going to go around the horn. I want to talk about some of Clarence's guys. Anders, I'm going to give you the juiciest one, and juiciest, I mean by actual juiciest. What happens to Emil?
So Emil, God, he ends up getting doused from this giant vat that actually says right on it, toxic waste.
Yeah.
Straight up labeled that way. Oh, God, he gets doused in this. And I mean, we talked about it earlier, this is where the Cronenberg would have been really interesting. His hands are like melting and elongated. His face is all kind of just formed. And now he just wants someone to help him. He goes to... what's his name? It's Ray Wise. Leon.
Yeah.
He goes to Leon. He's like, help me. Just get the fuck away from me. He goes, and ultimately he gets hit by a car and splatters everywhere. It was Clarence driving, right? Clarence.
Yeah. There's no solid in his body.
There's nothing left.
Just for a sec, back to that splatter. Part of the, what is it? Getting it down to an R rating was taking the sound out of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was, like didn't even affect any timing. You just take the sound out.
It's fucking gross. When he hits him,
it's disgusting.
He literally just explodes into liquid. Like there's nothing left.
Just like jelly all over his
jelly.
windshield.
I think they said they threw like watermelon flesh onto the windshield of the car to get the shot from the inside.
When he's actually melting, like when he's like walking and he's melting and everything, if you really look at it, it's incredible. Again, Rob Bottin, it's incredible. His hands, his skin is melting away on his thumbs, and his bones are sticking out.
So good.
It's so fucking good. It's so good. Go ahead, Minister.
Yeah, one thing that I don't think we mentioned yet, this when he's back with Lewis in the warehouse, this is when you get the third act phrase of Murphy.
Oh yeah,
which is a huge deal.
Yes, yeah. She takes these. How long are those bolts? Like they're so fucking long.
Yeah, he's got like 3-inch bolts holding it in his skull.
Takes the bolts out of his skull and pops off his face mask. And I think one of the coolest bits of this is that the bullet is still in his forehead that killed him. Like it's sitting right on the top. Like that he's got, like you can still see it. But yeah, you're right. Now this is him kind of regaining his humanity to an extent.
Yes.
Right. He's got a face. He's actually got someone helping him, and he's having his memories. You're right. I didn't even think about that, Master.
And he has from there on, it's just nothing but that face. And I think that really helps propel the movie at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. They take the visor off, which we never see him without the visor.
Yeah, now you're looking at him as not just a robot. You're looking at him because he's getting his identity back.
Yep. Very astute, Master.
That's very cool. There's a lot of good themes in here.
Everything about that is symmetrical or asymmetrical. No, I'm just fucking around. All right. So, yeah, the Leon stuff is fantastic. One of my other favorite parts about the Leon thing is Leon is driving like a box truck, and he drives into the toxic waste vat that Anders mentioned. And it's really cool because when the doors open in the back, he just comes out with everything.
Yeah,
I like how he's
flushes out of it.
So good. He's flushed out.
Yeah, it's a great visual gag.
Yeah.
Apparently,
and he's standing, because Murphy's standing in front of it, so he can't. I guess he can't see around Murphy to see that it says toxic waste.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to run Murphy down, and he just sidesteps him.
I guess if you ever see the TV version of this film, which I've never seen before, they refilmed the scene, and Clarence avoids him, and he apparently it just ends like you don't see him die. You know he's going to die, but apparently on the TV version, Clarence sees him and drives around him. Because like on ABC on like a Tuesday night at 7, nobody wants to see that. So that was Emil. Officer Mike, I'm going to get you with Leon Nash, Ray Wise. What happens to him?
Leon Nash. So I'm trying to remember now which one.
The crane.
Oh yeah, he uses a magnetic crane to grab Robocop.
Yeah, he grabs
him. He grabs him with a magnet.
No,
he doesn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, he picks up a bunch of iron pieces and drops it on Robocop. Robocop's covered. You see him. You can see like an arm. He's struggling, and Ann Lewis takes one of the big guns that they've been using, and he just literally she shoots it at the crane, and it just obliterates it.
Totally blows up as Leon is yelling out something like, "I got him, Clarence!" And Anne, who's been shot herself, uses the gun to blow up the crane. A really cool bit about those guns, Manster. I don't know if you saw it in the Arrow video or not. In the scene where Clarence and all of his guys are blowing up the storefronts and the cars, there's a shot where one of the storefronts closest to them explodes, and Ray Wise mentions that you could see him and Kurtwood Smith turn from it, and it's in the movie. They actually got hit with shrapnel, but it wasn't really that bad, but they got hit enough that they got in their check like that week.
Shrapnel pay?
Prorated stunt workers pay.
Yeah.
And Ray Wise makes a joke. He's like, from that moment forward, I wanted to put myself in as much danger as possible. he's like, I was like, not struggling, but he's like, I'm an actor working job to job, and now I open up my check and I've got like an extra $500 because
I'll take some shrapnel to the face.
He's like, so any time they had like a dangerous scene, he's like, can you put me in it? All right, Manster, I left the best for last. So now Murphy is trapped under all the iron. Leon's dead. Emil's dead. Joe, he died earlier. I don't remember. I think he just gets shot. I think it's pretty quick with him. The cackling black guy, Joe. What ends up happening with Clarence Boddicker? This is fucking awesome.
Well, yeah, Clarence goes over there and he takes some rebar or something, right, and sticks it right through Murphy's shoulder. And, Murphy gets the best of him because does he pull him down? And then he takes out his needle dick data spike and right through the temple of Boddicker.
Right in the neck. Like
right in the neck. Okay, right not the temple. Yeah, right through the neck. You're right.
Right in I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, but either the carotid artery or the jugular. But
the jugular.
This scene, man, like if you watch this scene, Anders, did you notice like the jisming of blood that like lands on Murphy? It's amazing.
I mean, at this point, I just had almost stopped noticing the blood because it was everywhere, all throughout this movie.
But that's classic samurai. Because the blood pumps to his heartbeat, and it's just a jet out of the
aortic blood right there.
Yeah, Kirkwood Smith's neck. It was great stuff. It was great stuff.
Yeah. So Murphy gets up. He gets back into the Ford Taurus, which Manster immediately bought as soon as he saw this movie in 1988. First car.
I had a Ford Fairmont in '88, so
close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
He heads back to OCP because he's got to have a talk with Dick Jones, and Dick Jones and the old man are in the middle of a board meeting, and Murphy busts in on the board meeting. I think the old man's like, "What is the meaning of this?" Like in typical old guy kind of thing. And Murphy goes over, and we didn't mention it earlier, but he recorded Clarence Boddicker confessing everything when he beat the shit out of him and threw him through like 18 windows. He recorded it. He goes over to this like giant like Radio Shack wall of TVs that is in that office, and he plugs the data spike in. Which one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he opens the data spike. It's covered in blood. I just like that continuity and like that callback. Jams it in the machine. And all of a sudden, we get the admission from Clarence Boddicker. So, Mike, what does Dick Jones do at this point?
So he pulls out a gun and he holds it to the old man's head. And he says, don't come any closer or I'll kill the old man, to Robocop.
So the jig is essentially up, right? Now, Robocop can't break the fourth directive. And Dick knows that. Now, is it mentioned... I can't remember. Does the old man know that, or does someone say? Oh no! Or does Dick say you can't do anything?
I think Robocop says it.
Robocop says
I can't while he's an employee.
Okay.
I can't do anything.
That's right. He clues in the old man,
and the old man has again. There's certain lines in this movie I just think of randomly, like during the day, even when I haven't seen the movie in years. And one of them is "Bitches leave," and another one is "Dick, you're fired." And he fires Dick. He does a kind of a sidestep move. Old man still got moves.
Yeah, he does.
And fucking Murphy just unloads. By the way, Murphy's gun, I didn't write it down, but it's a modified Beretta. So it is an actual real gun that initially it was going to be the Desert Eagle that they have in the scene that the guy holds with the ED 209 scene where he gets killed. That was going to be Murphy's gun. But because the Desert Eagle, still a big gun. It didn't look big enough in the Robocop suit hand. So they decided, let's take another gun and modify it. So they took a Beretta and added like a longer stock to it, gave it like a semi-automatic. I don't know shit about guns, but they
took the triggers out too, so we could spin it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And all the scenes also, here's another little factoid. All the scenes, which I think there's only 2 in this movie, all the way through, every time you see the holster leg open up and him take the gun out, it's a completely different sci-fi. It's a completely different SFX leg that's not the actual leg. The leg doesn't do that at all. So every time they show it, they only show the hip because they're only shooting the hip. Did you also read every time he gets in or out of the car?
Yeah, I actually noticed that. Well, I was watching the movie. He's standing right in the car. Then the next scene, he's sitting in the car. I'm like, oh, he can't get in the car.
Right. And he can't get out. That's why you have those iconic scenes of the foot hitting the ground.
Yeah.
And then
so he's pantsless every time he's in a car.
Yep. No suit on the bottom. No suit on the bottom. He's Winnie the Poohing it, as they say. He blasts Dick Jones. Dick Jones falls out of the window. I'm not ever going to give this movie shit, but I've mentioned it on the Pint before. Pay attention to the Ronnie Cox, the doll. The arms look like they're about 12 feet long. Yeah, they're so long. They're so long. He hits the ground. And honestly, the original idea of this movie was that, so we get the end. It's very simple. He's walking out. The old man says, what's your name? Anders, what does he say?
It's Murphy.
Says Murphy. Boom. The movie ends. Robocop. That's another part of the symmetry or asymmetry. I don't fucking know. The movie starts with Robocop as a title card and ends with Robocop as a title card as well.
Yeah.
So he says Murphy, right? And that's a perfect ending to this movie because it ends with him reclaiming, kind of like he's on the path to reclaiming his humanity. The original ending was supposed to be one more news break that was going to show you that Lewis didn't die because they never told you that. It was going to show you that a news break that Bixby Samper, the star of It's Not My Problem, was being arrested for messing with underage girls that were supposed to be on his show. There was a couple little things like that. And they decided that would be like, it's so climactic and perfect with the, Murphy, Robocop, that they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that.
Yeah. Very smartly decided that.
Very smart.
Very smart.
Yep. All right. So that's Robocop. We're going to rate it in a minute. But man, sir, let's talk about what was out in the movie theaters around, what was that, July of 2017? Fucking A, 1987.
So I'm talking about fractions of a penny here. And over time, they add up to a lot.
Yeah, July 17th day was released. So I'm going to give you that weekend, give you what was out. And I'm going to do something a little bit different for the year.
Ooh.
So that week, 3 movies were out for the first week that week. Robocop came in number 1 that week. Number 2, we talked about this at some other point. Snow White, which was in the Seven Dwarfs, which was a re-release first week. And Jaws the Revenge, number 3 that week, also out for the first week. Number 4 was Revenge of the Nerds Part 2, Nerds in Paradise. And the last one was Full Metal Jacket, number 5, in its 4th week. So the year 1987 had a lot of good movies. I imagine some of which we'll be talking about this year. This is the 35th year anniversary of all these movies here. Robocop came in at number 16 that year. I'm just going to give you a whole rundown of a bunch of movies. Number 75, Creepshow 2. 77, Hellraiser. 41, The Princess Bride. 38, The Lost Boys, but the far superior Near Dark at 139.
Larry's crying right now.
Sorry, Larry.
Larry's crying.
Lost Boys could suck it.
Oh, Lost Boys.
By the way, if you're a member of the Pint of Comics Patreon, which we just started, we will be doing a 35th anniversary episode on the Lost Boys in a couple weeks. So don't let my co-host shit on it too much. We'll be having fun with that.
The Running Man, Nightmare 3, Full Metal Jacket, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Predator, Dirty Dancing, Lethal Weapon, The Untouchables, Good Morning, Vietnam, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Fatal Attraction, and the number 1 movie that year, 3 Men and a Baby.
Yeah. Well, you can't win them all. You can't win them all. No,
It's a lot of good movies. I'm
movies.
sure we'll be hitting some of those.
Oh yeah, I've already got at least one other one, and I'll just spoil it now. Predator, that's happening.
Of course.
This year. That's happening. All right, so let's talk about what we thought of this film.
You gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them.
The Pint of Comics rules, a scale of 0 to 5. 0 being the absolute fucking pits. 5 being, oh my God, this movie blew my mind. I can't get enough of it. Quarter and half scale optional. Let's start off with Officer Mike. You can find Mike at ConnecticutCultClassics.com. He's Larry's right-hand man. He sets everything up. He gets the movies rolling. He is the guy, right? He is the guy. Larry, we love Larry. Larry, you're nothing without Mike. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. You also heard it because you're not here, and I would never say that in front of you. But you heard it here first. Officer Mike, what do you give the 35th anniversary 1987's RoboCop?
I love this movie. It's beyond a classic in my eyes. I'm going to give it a 4.75. It's not perfect. And in a oeuvre of films, it's a very bloody action movie. It's not Citizen Kane, but as action movies go, it's near perfect in my eyes.
4 3/4 from Officer Mike. I'll go next. I echo Mike. 4.75. I can't give it a 5. And I can't really tell you why. Maybe there's some structural issues that are, maybe it takes a little while. I don't know. But I know I love this movie, man. I had not seen this in probably about 5 years. Threw it in one morning last week. Man, I was enthralled like I hadn't seen it ever. I was enthralled by it. Like everything we talked about. I love the news breaks. I love that structure of storytelling. Peter Weller's fine, but I don't think you needed a super, super strong or big name actor in this because you know what? Well, we do learn a couple movies later that Peter Weller definitely counted. Right? We'll talk about that on another episode. But I still don't think you had to worry about it being Schwarzenegger or someone like that. A good character actor. Maybe a little Lance Henriksen might have been great. Again, we mentioned Michael Ironsides might have been great. That kind of actor. Someone with some gravitas, someone who has a presence. But yeah, 4.75. This movie, it's still violent. Some of the violence is still shocking, man. The scene where they kill him is just fucking bad. It's just like I get clenched up when I see that because it's one of those scenes like we've talked about it before that even though you've seen a movie a million times and you know that your mind can't change it, you're like, let him get away. Come on, don't shoot his arm off, you fucks. But they do. All right, we're gonna go around the horn. So let's go to my co-host, the Manster, the lifeblood of Pint of Comics.
I do have a lot to say about this. I really like this movie. I'm so glad we picked it. I hadn't seen it in quite a few years, and it just brought me back to really solidify this is a great movie. It's a clever action movie. It's got some deep themes. It's satirical. There's stuff we didn't really talk about. Themes of personal identity, losing your identity. Obviously, the corporate greed and corruption. Sort of a rebuke of Reaganomics. It's even got religious themes in it. When you consider he was killed, he was risen back. There's a scene of him when he dies, he falls down in a Christ pose. Yeah. And when he comes in that gritty, dirty, rusty water, he's literally walking on water. So there's that. The movie doesn't pull any punches. It doesn't waste any time. It has very interesting characters, great acting. Everything tracks. There's nothing that takes you out of the movie. It's got great world building. It's just very well done. I give it a 4.75. I couldn't give it a 5 just because it's not perfect. It's got one woman in it, I think. Well, a couple others, but...
bitches, please. Bitches, leave.
Right. But it doesn't make the best use of women, but that's okay. It suits the movie. 4.75. So close.
Yeah, and we didn't mention it, but when Nancy Allen met up with Paul Verhoeven, he immediately told her you have to shave, you have to cut your hair. He wanted her
such a bad haircut.
he wanted her to not look feminine.
Yeah.
And I want to.
And there was no romance. That was great.
There, someone at some point suggested there be romance, and they all kiboshed it, and that is fucking perfect because so many movies would have done that. You know, it's like,
Yes.
well, my wife is gone, Lewis. You know, I love you, and they're like, no. She's his partner. She's his backup, and let's keep it like that. You know, let's keep it like that. All right, I don't want to put any pressure on you.
4.75 times 3.
Yeah, we got 3, 4 3/4. Anders is the co-host of 2 podcasts, Bohemian Geek Studies, where they talk all geeky things, a lot of Star Wars stuff, and then yet another Star Wars podcast. I listen every week to hear, man, they love Star Wars over there. You guys love Star Wars so much. It's actually, you know what, I'm not even going to lie, it's nice to hear someone unabashedly, you guys are honest with your opinions, but you still love it. It's not like listening to someone like me who's just like, fuck that. So go check those shows out. It's fun. You're right. So Anders, being the one guy here that was born after this movie came out and not experiencing maybe the 80s as we did, which this movie's steeped heavily in, even though it's a futuristic movie. What do you think about it, and what do you give it?
I do still love this movie. I didn't see it until it had been out for quite some time. Like I said, I think I was like 17, 18 maybe the first time I saw it. At no point can I remember not knowing who Robocop was. Which speaks to this movie, just iconic in every sense of the word. Watching it this time, I mean, what else in movies and anything looks like Robocop? What else looks like Ed 209? It's fantastic. Manster mentioned it does not waste time. One of the biggest mistakes, apart from just existing, that the remake that they made was they went back to like the wife and the kid a lot. And this movie, it recognizes that they exist. He's thinking about them, but they don't actually like bring them back and actually try to make that a full plot.
Right.
And everything just moves the entire time. They don't waste time where cops are like, oh, we don't need a robot. Everyone just kind of accepts him. He walks in, he does great at target practice, and like, cool, here's a car. Go solve crimes. The supporting cast of this movie, we've talked about them all pretty much. Just phenomenal across the board. Nancy Allen, I still refuse to believe she's not related to Maggie Gyllenhaal, but that's topic for another time, I guess.
Well, I kind of see that. Let me tell you something right now. I looked up Nancy Allen very recently, and man, she's a hot older lady. She is.
Oh, yeah, she looks great.
She has held it together.
She is awesome. She's got white hair.
She's beautiful.
Shoulder.
Man.
She's beautiful. She's just
held.
That was such a change for this movie. You know, you mentioned that Verhoeven made her, dress down and etc. Because I remember going in, I did not realize this, because seeing her in Carrie naked in the opening scenes, I mean, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
And all through, she was always a beautiful woman in all the movies. And I remember I did not realize it was the same person the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned it.
I think she has said that in order to help her get into the mindset of this kind of defeminized character, the director told her wear men's underwear to get into character as the cop.
I know she did cut her hair before the role, and then ended up subsequently cutting her hair like 6 more times to get it to where Verhoeven was happy.
Yeah,
her dad was also a career cop, so there was probably something there too, like that made her want to do this. Yeah, I'll paraphrase my buddy Joey from So Was Your Podcast and say, Nancy Allen, she still got it.
Oh yeah,
she's looking good. All right, Anders, what else you got? Anything else?
I think I'll just I'll end on my rating. I'm not going to go quite as high as you guys, but I am going pretty high. I'm going to give this a 4.5.
All right. Fair.
It's a fair rating.
That's very fair. I almost landed there myself. I had to think. I knew I wasn't at a 5, but I knew I was between 4.5 and 4.75, and I really enjoyed it. All right, Manster, tell everybody where they can find Pint of Comics.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Podcast, any old podcast finder you can get. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch podcasts there, listen to podcasts, ring the little bell to get notifications. On Facebook and Twitter, it's at Pint of Comics, and on Instagram, it's at Pint_O_comics.
And don't forget, we now have a Patreon. Couple episodes a month we're looking at right now. There's only one tier. We're going to make it simple for you. $2.50. It's not much. You're going to get full-length episodes. We're going to do some cool stuff. So check us out there as well. A lot of people have signed up. Appreciate it. Manster, why don't you say the words that we say when we want to leave an episode of Pint of Comics?
Bitches leave.
I'll take that.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!